the final frontier is Bitcoin, right? Everything funnels into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the biggest AI play. Like,
I'm infinitely bullish and infinitely bearish at the same time.
yeah, I
I'm
guess
bullish Bitcoin and bearish everything else.
and that's part of the reason I feel like an obligation to orange pill is because I feel lucky that, somebody else orange pilled me and that's benefited my life.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Your ATM is safe, your banks are safe, there's enough cash in the financial system, and there is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. Take the orange pill, and we'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
All right, we're going to get started. This is episode 11, OrangePillDocs. What's up, Adam?
What's up, Chris? We're live from the call rooms. We're bringing on the road.
We are the OrangePillDocs Roadshow. We're both on call tonight, mining fiat, in order to bring you Bitcoin and AI and the future content. What's new? It's been a couple weeks. Last time we debriefed the Bitcoin Treasury Conference.
What's new is there's an all-time high, Chris.
There's no greater feeling than hitting that sweet.
Yeah.
125.
I think if you're watching the show, if you're like the 30 people that watch the show, you probably know that. But if you are new,
it's Uptober. It's going to be all-time high every single episode.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, things are stacking up to be super bullish for Bitcoin. AI is still going vertical, all that. We'll get into that a little bit. We officially clocked an all-time high last night while we were at our in-person Bitcoin meetup, which was cool to experience. Or it was right after it, right? Like right after we all left.
Yeah, it was like an hour after we left. And of course, our group chat was blowing up.
Yeah. And we closed that last episode. And I want to open it with the same sentiment of going to Bitcoin meetups and like meeting people in person is just so much value. I think that last night, us doing the in-person meetup of our doctor friends that are into Bitcoin, like just reaffirmed that for me. I don't know how you felt leaving that.
It's just fun to talk about and be able to talk about this stuff and kind of go through the stuff that's percolating in your head, all the time. And it gives you an outlet to express all that stuff. It's not always a safe place at home, probably for most of us.
Yeah. You can become a lot on people that aren't, how do I say this? If your family and friends and like your spouse don't get it to the same level that you do, and you can just keep talking about it and they still don't understand it, which everyone's at a different time point of their understanding, but like it just becomes like kind of unbearable. I can see why that becomes a thing, right? That's kind of why we made this outlet for ourselves, is just to have kind of a safe space to talk about it where we're trying to be productive. Like we're not here to make money, but we're trying to just help other people versus us just texting about it all night anyway.
Might
as well go ahead.
I was in that same vein. I had a conversation with one of the guys from last night, and he was just talking about all the attack vectors on like your own personal stack of Bitcoin or, your stack of treasury company like strategy. And he mentioned a really good point, and he was starting to talk about how like he had gotten to the point where he was worried that his kids and his wife, God forbid anything ever happened to him, wouldn't understand the value of what he held. So he does everything right, puts it into cold storage, has been, dollar cost averaging in and holding for many, many years, and something happens. He's basically told his kids, he's like, whatever happens, you do not sell this. You hold it and you borrow against it, lend against it, whatever you need to do to like have life keeping on, but you don't sell it. And that made me like kind of got my gears going because, we're both pretty young and, man, already getting the interruption. Level 2, we're good.
Obviously, this is not financial advice. It's not medical advice. This is subject to multiple interruptions because we're both on call for different services at different hospitals. We'll see what we get at the end. So far, we've gotten lucky and have good products at the end of these on-call roadshows. But
if it's a bad product, we'll blame being on call. But it got me thinking, and it's like, he's right. And so one of the attack vectors I'd start to argue is like, you almost have a duty to orange pill your family that you're going to inherently pass this on to, right? Especially your kids. Because the last thing you want to do is it gets you thinking about like generational wealth. And I can't remember if I heard this on a podcast or if it was one of my buddies that told me it, but he basically was talking about how he had a friend that was recently like out with his granddad or something in like a city they grew up in, and they're driving around town and they passed by like a really nice boat. And he's like, the granddad's like, oh, I actually built that boat, like that's in the harbor. And the grandson or the son was like, wow, I never knew that. I don't even know how to use like a hammer, you know? And it gets you thinking about like, how did that happen? How did that like loss of skill and, you know, it's the proof of work concept that's like in front of you. And so that made a lot of sense to me. And I've always been a big proponent of like trying to orange pill as many people as I can. You know, I think there's this whole idea of like, people don't really understand what the problem is. So I try and paint what the problem is and then pose Bitcoin as a solution in the life raft. And obviously you have more of a bias towards like your family and your friends to do that. But that just like re-cemented that whole idea for me. It's like, I don't have any kids yet. I know you have kids, Chris, but I'm sure you're me cementing that into them, that whole proof of work concept of.
Yeah, they give me, in their own age appropriate way, give me a hard time for being so into Bitcoin. And to some degree, I'm very much obsessed with it because it's like, instead of having normie hobbies like golfing or whatever, like I just study Bitcoin and talk about Bitcoin and do podcasts about Bitcoin and go to conferences about Bitcoin. I think it's important. It's interesting. And I think it's where we're headed. And I think it's the whole fix the money, fix the world ideology. Like, I think that that's really true. And I want to be a part of that. And I think my goal eventually is that they're just familiar with it. And eventually they realize that, oh, dad was like actually really ahead of the curve. And like, I'm really glad he was involved in that.
Yeah.
That's my, it's
They're
not
not
quite,
old enough yet.
yeah.
But I remember like when it was my birthday and they gave me that card and they had Bitcoin drawn all over the card.
Yeah.
I had associated you and me with that. But
I don't remember if I told them to draw you a Bitcoin card, but there's a very high chance they just did that anyway, because that's just what their association is.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I just thought that was a really neat concept that I hadn't really thought, right? Like you almost have and the duty to pass on your stack is also to explain what the worth of the stack is.
Yeah, I think that's very true. On that same vein, like do you think it's easier to orange pill people when price action is like at all-time highs, or do you think that the unit bias kind of crushes your ability to do that?
I think the unit bias is definitely a thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I run into that are like, "Oh, Bitcoin's like the rich person's coin." Like that, if they're crypto like interested, they're like, "I can't afford Bitcoin; that's too expensive." And then they start looking at things like it's always XRP or one of these. It's like dollars to the coin, but they don't understand the tokenomics. They don't understand market cap. So you have to kind of explain some of those things. They don't understand you can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin and it'll go up the same amount in percentile basis. I think it's easier when the price is going up, but I have a harder time orange pilling people as the price is going up and when we're in the most bullish part of the cycle, because I don't want, because then inevitably the price is it's super volatile. It's going to come back down and it's harder to get them to buy and hold for 4 years, which is always my goal, to withstand a whole cycle. So they, price historically is it positive after 4 years. I don't know what experience you've had, but I try my best to get them into it when it's earlier in the cycle.
I don't orange pill people as much as I should. I mean, I end up having conversations with people because they know what I'm interested in. And now you got me some merch for the podcast. Like, oh, what's that? What do you do? I think the unit bias thing is real. Unit bias thing is real. And like, as much as you talk to people about it, once they walk away and pull it, if you got them to download an app and they pull it up, they're like, oh, I can't afford, it's $123,000 per coin. They're like, I'm not buying that. Like, because you're so used to buying equities and like individual stocks and things that are sub $100,
Well, it's why stocks split, right? I mean, strategy was trading essentially would be trading at $3,500 a share right now prior to that 10-to-1 split. I mean, think about people trying to buy that. So that's been around for a long time. I think Trollstein actually talked about this in the most recent True North. He was at like a wedding or something up in the Northeast or Minnesota or something like that. And he was talking about how one of the guys that he met there was finance bro. Talking about how they somehow got into crypto or Bitcoin. And the guy was basically not advising his clients to buy Bitcoin because it was like too expensive. He's like, that's too rich for my blood. I can't afford like 123,000. And of course, he's trying to explain to him like, no, man, you don't have to buy a whole coin. Like, still shows how early everything is and that there's a lot of education that has to happen. But I don't know, if we do start to really rip here, that's when everybody starts to, oh man, FOMO in and start buying. I almost have a harder time trying to tell people to buy at that point of the cycle because it starts getting super frothy. I don't want people to be buying when we're up 60% in the last 2 months or something, If we get to 444 or something like that, well, buy now because it's going to $1 million. I mean, I can't say that in good faith.
Yeah, It's almost like I don't try to get people to buy, I just try to get people to realize why I'm interested and why I care about it. Like the whole trope, like you can't rent conviction. Like you have to build up your own, especially if you're going to invest your personal wealth and like your future plans into a very volatile asset like Bitcoin. I mean, the vol is coming down, which I think will help orange pill people over time. But at the same time, people they try to project past performance into forward performance. So when they pull the trigger, they want to get the high vol that they used to be afraid of. And like, I'm not sure they're going to get all the same that they did. I haven't thought about it that way before. I just said that, but
yeah, it's interesting. You kind of have to like cater your orange pilling to the person, like the same spiel that I would give like a buddy of mine. I'm not going to give to like, some older person or my granddad, right? They want different things. Like I'm going to go after like the conversation with Stretch or Strife, preferred stock of strategy with like my granddad or somebody who's looking for fixed income and like a safer asset than I am somebody who's our age and would have, years to accrue value.
Have you tried to orange pill many not medical professionals, like not doctors?
I've had a couple of buddies, like my fiance's had a couple friends over and their spouses or boyfriends have come over. Of course, like what always ends up happening is the girls go and they talk about their thing and then the guys hang out and start talking about their thing. And inevitably, somehow I always bring up Bitcoin or, start talking about it. And I've had some success. Like a lot of times when they have that conversation, some of them have dabbled in some crypto and it's very few that I ever start having that conversation and they're like solely Bitcoin. Most of them have bought some other stuff, like they have some Ethereum or Solana or XRP or something like that. And so I'll try and explain the differences. But I feel like sometimes it's harder when people are in the crypto space already to like orange pill them into Bitcoin. Like they're already kind of like, they think they know too much, Go ahead.
I was going to ask you a follow-up of, do you think doctors are easier to orange pill because we are so good at processing information? But it's not really as much of that, as much as how they approach their personal finances and their investing. If you have someone that thinks that they're sniping all these stocks and stuff, like it's gonna be hard to orange pill them because they think that they have this big head of, if they've been successful, like, oh, they're just gonna keep doing that and ride it to a billion and right off into the sunset. And then there's people that are totally passive, like just have Vanguard do the targeted fund. And
Yeah.
like those people are equally hard to orange pill. There's like a sweet spot of people that kind of realize they have a need for something more than the passive thing and don't just want to blindly trust someone with a bunch of acronyms after their name. Because that doesn't feel right to them either. Like, but it's kind of this, it's the rabbit hole. It's truly it's the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
You have to get someone to the entrance of the rabbit hole before you can help like guide them down. Some people are like not even on the same zip code as the rabbit hole.
You can't take them down the rabbit hole if they don't see the rabbit hole, right? They kind of have to see what the problem is. And so that's the thing I'll always kind of test the waters with, is that I'll start bringing up some problem with society and somehow get on the topic of the money printing and the currency debasement. And you can kind of tell then if people have kind of like, they understand that and they're like, oh yeah, like inflation is way higher than they actually said it. Then, like that person's amenable to having the conversation. And that's always fun, like when you get those gears turning, because it opens up to so much more depth of and breadth of conversation. I think more so, especially with Stretch now trading at par, and I'm just excited to see where that goes as far as the flywheel that could accrue. I think that's how I'm going to start trying to work in some of these people who clearly are concerned about Bitcoin's volatility, but like getting them exposed to like, oh, this is a real thing that's changing finance, is getting them to buy some Stretch for the, basically the 10% money market savings and using that as a savings account. And I think once they do that for 6 months or a year or something and see like, oh, wow, why am I getting so much back here? The stock hasn't really changed price. Maybe that'll open their eyes, kind of like from a reverse angle.
Yeah, kind of the hand raising polls that Saylor was doing, like how many of you have a savings account and like what does it pay? Like you quickly, if you put it to 1%, like nobody raises their hand.
Yeah.
And so would you like 10%? Like what would you like 5%? And everyone raised their hand. Like, what if I could give you 10%? Onboard them that way. I think those tools are actually really valuable. And there's some people trying to poo-poo them on X, like, oh, these aren't valuable, just buy Bitcoin. Like, yeah, Bitcoin is the ultimate base layer of all the stuff we're talking about, but people have different needs and different approaches and different paradigms they approach the world from. And I would argue with almost 100% certainty that you can orange pill a lot of people onto getting a 10% yield in a stable principle than like getting them to buy cold storage Bitcoin. Like that's just infinitely easier in my mind.
Yeah, we've kind of made this analogy of in science and medicine, it advances like by decades, like because of like those who pass away, finally let like the new information and new technology to kind of like take its root. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it happens in every aspect of society. So I think this whole idea of like our generation, like millennials and younger, and of course there's some boomers and stuff that adopt Bitcoin and get it. I think they're more of like an outlier. Historically, like the people who have the vast concentration of money, 40 and older population, those people, the way they're going to get onboarded is usually not going to be like, I'm going to go set up a River account and buy Bitcoin and send it to cold storage. They're going to buy the ETFs. They're going to buy the strategy products, the equities, and that's how they're going to get exposure. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's something that was inevitably going to happen no matter what. And in the future, I think hopefully those people will start to realize the value in having cold storage Bitcoin. Hopefully some big event doesn't happen that forces that, but there's utility to both. And it was the way that Bitcoin was going to get onboarded into traditional finance. Like those rails already existed through equities, through, the ETFs. It was kind of like a necessary evil is the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the preferred products, like I've been kind of dreaming up in my head how to vibe code an app that lets you basically do your own high yield savings where, because there's programmable like brokerage accounts. I think like Interactive Brokers is the one that Perplexity said would be a good avenue for this. But if you wanted to just buy Stretch, auto buy Stretch as your savings account, like if you budget and like figure, okay, I can save this much per week, buy Stretch automatically. Once you get a critical mass of Stretch, then automatically roll it into iBit or Bitcoin on their platform.
That'd be
And
cool.
obviously, like I wouldn't want it to be a bank or something, but just make it more automated and easy that you just click a button and like keep track of your savings, see the returns of your Bitcoin. Because the argument of it, or just buy Bitcoin, is like as from a medical perspective, like if people want to live longer, like lose weight, don't drink alcohol,
Got
walk
it, Doc.
10 miles a day.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that was
like no one's going to do that. No one does that. That's why primary care exists. That's why America has all the chronic diseases that it has. And then like even trying to convince people that they need to take their medicine when they don't realize there's a problem.
That's an interesting analogy. I feel like it kind of goes back to what Saylor was saying at the last conference. He's like, the solution is Bitcoin, but you almost have to like do things to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
You look back to that digital transformation and you talk about like the oil analogy and how you had to refine it into all these different products to make people be able to use them. It's the same idea, right? And you have to do things in order to make people be able to like take their orange pill medicine. You know that it's better for them, but like by creating it into an equity, creating it into an ETF, creating it into a high yield savings account through Stretch, that's how you get them. It's like a more palatable dose for them to take. And then by getting off zero and experiencing what the orange pill side effects are of like my wealth actually goes up and I'm not losing money, in my savings account every month. I don't think people realize how fast that's going to happen, especially now that like you have all those products on Robinhood.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Other big news this week.
Yeah.
I was not disappointed. I was surprised that hit Robinhood. We had definite price action in the zone where they would have sold Stretch. But Saylor came out. It's Sunday. We're recording on Sunday. Usually it's dot day, like he announces a Bitcoin buy. He said no Bitcoin buy this week, but just reference everyone to the $9 billion of capital appreciation they had from Bitcoin's price run. Lots of things to unpack. Number one, they made $9 billion of value that directly flows into gap earnings, which is wild.
Yes.
I mean, it has to. We're officially in Q4, so it have to hold that for the whole quarter, for it to hit the balance sheet. Then they had, like, why did they not sell or buy Bitcoin this week? Interesting, like, theories that you can get into. I think it's because the quarter ended and they want to keep it clean, like quarter by quarter math.
I think that's probably right. He kind of did something, if I remember, we're talking about Saylor here, in the last quarter. He didn't really buy going into the close of the quarter.
If the week bridged a quarter, then he just didn't buy that week, I think, so that it's cleaner, like this was Q3, this is Q4. But he's also done breaks and then like come out on Monday and you're like, okay, there's gonna be no announcement today, and he like announces a whole new preferred equity.
Yeah, that's always possible.
So I tried to get a Perplexity to like probability weight? Like, is it quarter closing? Is it just earnings blackout super early, which I think is very rare, would be very rare because earnings is not going to come out until the end of October. Or is it a new preferred equity? And it gave it like a 10 to 20% chance that it's a new product. But it also cited that there's no one's talking about it on social media. It's like, but I didn't go back and refine that thought process and tell it like, but that's the whole point is that no one knows before he announces it, so no one would be talking about it.
Perplexity is like, hey,
But
on, I'm talking with Saylor right now.
Yeah.
We're actually not at the end of our conversation. He's currently building.
Yeah, he's currently building. So, but I think it's a non-zero chance. I mean, am I obviously not betting the farm or anything like that, but I would love to see it. I think that'd be awesome. But maybe it's just because the quarter ended. That's probably the most benign, realistic reason.
Well, what do you think are the chances of S&P inclusion at the end of this quarter, since we're on that topic?
I don't know, because then I actually looked up, because EA Sports is going private or something.
Yes.
That was big news. Like, since
got
so
bought,
strategy,
right?
they got bought and they're like getting basically delisted. And that was the
a
biggest.
spot in S&P, right? That's like that was an S&P.
That's a spot in S&P, and that's the only spot that's had a hint of being open since strategy got declined for Q3.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, is that actually happening? But it doesn't happen until 26. So it's not. I was like, oh, maybe he's blocking everything out because he has material knowledge about S&P inclusion via a backdoor like that. But it's not. It's definitely, if that's true, it's not the EA Sports one or EA Game, whatever. It's not EA Sports. Not actually the thing, but it is the company that owns EA Sports.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think some of the stuff is so antiquated and slow to happen. Like he said this at the conference, right? He's like, it's such a new, like I'm having conversations with these traditional finance guys, and they're asking if it's going to get banned. You know, they're just like a year or two behind the latest news. I'm kind of leaning that hopeful that it's going to be in Q4, like it'd be a nice kind of Christmas type deal, but
For MSTR.
yeah, I still think it's a good entry where we currently are, and I think a lot of people have been kind of shaken out ever since that like blow off into the low 500s. 140,000 Bitcoin is a lot of Bitcoin.
What do you think about the whole argument about the liquidation preferences and like all the back and forth on those actually are really bad for the common? And me and you have not had that direct conversation on that specific topic.
I don't know. I think if you invest in strategy and the preferreds, you inherently believe in Bitcoin, right? That's like thesis number one. Like you have to have conviction in Bitcoin. And then once you start getting into like the liquidation preferences, like obviously you want to weigh the risks and benefits of everything, but the way that Saylor has built the company and built the stack, the capital stack, I think he's just done it in a very conservative and way that there's, obviously, and with him having withstood a bear market already, that's something that I'm less concerned of. Like I'm not buying a bunch of Strife with the idea that eventually like the Strife holders are going to have access to all the Bitcoin on the capital stack, right? I think if that's the case, something is catastrophically wrong. Like if that were to happen and strategy were to like implode, imagine what that would do to the Bitcoin price.
I mean, there's a possibility that strategy does something really dumb that kills strategy, but Bitcoin's not dead. I think we're not nowhere near that. Like there's no indication of that currently. If that was where we were headed, then I think it'd be a different conversation. But like you said, as some people put it, it's a binary outcome. Like Bitcoin's either going to survive and strategy survives because they're so tightly correlated, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then what are you really getting claim on? Like the UTXOs that are worth what, like $1?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if strategy were to implode, the Bitcoin price would dramatically fall, but I think it would recover. What was it? The Galaxy sale that was 80,000 Bitcoin. Like that's 8x. That would be like an 8x example, and the price only went down 3,000 or 4,000 a coin. I'm not saying that it'd probably dramatically fall in that event, but I think it would survive either way. I just think the way that the whole company is set up, its strategies unlike a lot of the other treasury companies, in that they've, Saylor knows what he's doing. There's a reason he's
but I think there is a real argument, and something you have to revisit is like he's building this AI, and obviously they're vetted and people look at them, but it doesn't mean that they're perfect by any means, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a reasonable take.
I guess since we're on this topic of like possibilities, we kind of talked about this briefly at the dinner we had the other night, but what do you think the chances are of strategy getting nationalized, or like the US government taking a portion like they did with Intel of stake into the company?
I thought about this on the drive home. Like I live further than where we met than most people, so I had a longer debriefing in my own head. I think it's much more likely that the sovereign wealth fund gets spun up and like it happens that way versus like just which that's kind of what Trump's doing already with Intel and these like lithium mines. And so I guess in some ways I'm trying to say it's yes, but different, but it's really the same. Do they hostily take over and kick the door down and take all the Bitcoin? Like, I don't think so. Would they strategically invest because they think that there's a good chance of returns? Maybe. But I view it very differently than Intel. Like, we need Intel and all those other things, like, literally to rebuild our military.
Yeah, you also
Like,
need capital to build a military.
not if you can print money.
Yeah,
People
but I
still
mean,
want dollars. We're very far away from dollars being worthless.
yeah, I don't think Bitcoin's going to be the new money anytime soon. I mean, I think if it's much easier if you have an asset that's appreciating at the scale that Bitcoin appreciates rather than holding dollars. That works for a government. I think that works for a citizen.
I think we're gonna keep propping up the dollar until our military can back something else. Because people like it's like what's the dollar backed by? It's not by gold, it's like by our battleships and all of our military. But as the theme that's come out when people talk about this is the war with Russia and Ukraine showed that our manufacturing bases cannot support a large scale war. Like we got outproduced by the Russian side in that proxy war, like multiples to one. And Jordy Visser on his podcast actually like I started like zooming into his YouTube things and like screenshotting. He's like, I'm not gonna read this to you. So I pause it and like zoom in and screenshot. But it was something like if we got into a full scale war with like China over Taiwan or something, for example, like we have like less than a full calendar week of munitions. And to rebuild the munitions would be like 5 years.
Sweet. That makes me feel good.
So yeah, so that's like right before we hit record, I'm like, I'm so bullish on Bitcoin and so bearish literally everything else. And that's one of the reasons why. Like to back to the original question, what backs the dollar? Like faith and trust in the US government that can't even keep itself open, that can't even agree to pay the bills. We're
Well,
literally in a
that's
government
the
shutdown.
joke is with a lot of people that I talk to about what backs the dollars. They always joke it's aircraft carriers, but like you said,
Yeah.
like that might be gone too. You know?
What's an aircraft carrier without any guns on it?
Yeah.
Or an empty gun? A cargo ship? My son has that in the bathtub.
That's right. That's
The
hilarious.
dollar's looking good. I got
Yeah.
some in my house.
Man, that's not good. I was gonna say something.
That was a tangent. I don't even know what we were talking about.
No,
But
I mean that this is important stuff, right? Like this all it goes back. I mean, you talk about like Triffin's dilemma. This is the end result of all of that, right? This whole idea of being the global reserve currency and having to export everything.
yeah. So we're talking about Intel. Like I think Intel is a huge piece in reversing that trend of like us having an actual military that we can support and like, for lack of a better term, weaponize. Like we have a very chest puffed out like I think our military is very very strong, but it's not like we were when we were onshore mass manufacturing everything in World War II, where we could just create endless munitions and our war machine could go fight the Department of War, as we just changed the name, like was effective for essentially infinite time duration.
Yeah,
I don't think we're not in that world anymore. Like we are very very powerful military, but for a very very finite amount of time. If you're honest about it, and like what we've done over the past 50 years of manufacturing.
If you also think about like the U.S. populace, right? If that were to happen and we were to have to like convert a lot of our manufacturing to like a war-based system, you know, hoping that's not the case. I can't imagine like, you know, kind of around World War II, World War I era where we all started working together to like just make stuff happen and, you know, start rationing goods and then focusing on being able to create more ammunition and weapons. Can you imagine that in today's society?
Well, we're not going to get a choice. I mean, you didn't have a choice to ration before, but it's going to come in the form of rolling brownouts because there's no power. Because the government is focusing on AI, which really is self-serving to rebuild the military, right? We're not going to be rationed stuff I mean, maybe we will at the grocery store, but
I think we
it's
definitely
just
will.
like your power's just going to go out for a couple hours at night so that we can keep pumping the AIs.
Well, if they have to build, like you said, if we only got a week's worth of ammunition, they got to start creating that somehow, right? So, like, I just can't imagine. It's sad to say, but I just don't think we're the same country we were 60, 80 years ago. But, you know?
Yeah. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think people are starting to finally wake up to the realities of where our policy decisions over the past decades have landed us.
Yeah.
So then the question is Bitcoin an indicator of faith in that or lack of faith in that? Because I mean, it could be both, right? It could be an extreme lack of faith in the U.S. government and our like ability to defend ourselves and defend our currency, or it could be we could recapitalize on it and like you said, and our gains on rebuilding that,
I like to
figuring
be
out which.
optimistic, but I think it's the former. I think it's
I mean, but it depends on who's buying it. Like, are you in this country or not? I mean, I don't know.
right. Well, I mean, like a good example is that is for the first time in I don't know how many centuries, foreign central banks now have more gold reserves than they have U.S. Treasuries, right? So that's a good example of like
I mean,
the
that's
right.
partially due for context. People not aware that's because big gold is on like a 200% return over the last like 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, they are buying more gold, like in the same, quantities, like net, like for like quantities, but it's also gold is just massively appreciated. But still, that's a world we've never lived in, right?
Right, and at the same time, the Treasury is offering these 30-year bonds that nobody's buying, right? And they're having to buy back their own. There's clearly an infrastructure problem when it comes to the monetary
Yeah.
system in our country.
I think as Luke Groman said, like even before the Trump era, like we have not like sold long-term debt net. Like if you net it out, like look at how much we sold versus bought. Like we haven't sold long-term debt in a long time, like a lot longer than people think. Like
Yeah,
the bond auctions happen, but it's all a lot of sleight of hand, is my understanding, and like we're just kind of recycling the same thing. We're not selling new long-term debt.
what do you think about the whole idea of like China is basically stacking gold right now, and then the U.S. has a decision to make whether we start accumulating gold or do we start accumulating Bitcoin? Is there a pro con to each? Is it
I think China choosing gold, and they've been pretty open about it, and like stuff leaks out of there from their like People's Bank of China, and like they're definitely pressing the gas on gold and having their citizens own gold. And they've so far proven to be very openly anti-Bitcoin, like banning mining. I don't know how they're like how else they're restrictive on Bitcoin, but banning mining was pretty big because that was a big industry and like a big slice of the pie in terms of Bitcoin mining hash rate. So they've obviously openly chosen gold. We have kind of not decided what we're going to do. We're just the dollar backed by battleships, as my son likes to. He's like learned how to do air quotes. We're the dollar backed by battleships. We obviously have not taken a stance on gold versus Bitcoin. We were gonna live stream Fort Knox and show us how much gold we have, but obviously we didn't. So read into that what you
that's kind
think.
of it's empty?
Yeah. Maybe they'll do the Sora 2 app, like Trump will upload his face and he can just make an AI one, and half the world would believe it
It's
anyway.
all here. It's
It's all the gold. We have
It's huge.
huge stash of gold, like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
So I think that it does back us in the corner, because if we all of a sudden want to back gold also, then we pump China's bags, which we're not going to do.
You think?
Like, I think if the U.S. came out in support of gold, that would just skyrocket the price even more, right? Or do you think that's not a good assumption?
No, I
Or
think
not
so.
a right assumption?
I mean, it's game theory, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Bitcoin that you just apply game theory to. It's any asset.
So we're behind on energy to China. We're behind on gold to China. Us choosing gold, like, I think makes that gap wider.
Yeah.
So
I
in
agree.
light of everything else that we're behind on in reality, macroeconomic wise to China, I would think that we are becoming more and more forced to back something like Bitcoin as a global reserve asset and like a hard money reversion from fiat. That's my take.
I agree. I think that's like the only way out.
Mm-hmm.
With it being basically 10-to-1 difference in market cap, Bitcoin being around 2.5 trillion and gold being around, I don't know what it is today, like 23, 24 trillion. If you were to somehow, increase the unrealized gold, if the gold we do have, is up 100x from what it was valued at, you could use that to theoretically buy Bitcoin per reserve. I don't know how they do it in a way that, they're able to accumulate the amount to put us within a far enough distance away from China.
So let me
Right.
tell you, let me bring up some other news from last week, and then we'll revisit this topic. In the last week, and since we recorded, but in the last week, actually, we talked about bailing out farmers because we're like, China just stopped buying our soybeans or something. We're going to bail out our farmers for $10 billion. That's $10 billion we're not going to spend on Bitcoin or gold. And then the tariff money that was supposed to fix all these problems, because we're in our election cycle, we're going to just ship people, we're going to helicopter money people $2,000 again. Because,
Mailbox money.
yeah. So that actually, I hadn't thought about this way, is like the most bearish thing of the US doing a SBR, like a Bitcoin reserve. Because obviously, if they were considering that, then they wouldn't be talking about helicopter money and bailouts. Unless, I mean, the bailout thing, it maybe just a contagion thing. Like if we let the farmers fail, then we don't eat, which is a big deal. But helicopter money from tariffs is like antithetical to a Bitcoin reserve, in my opinion.
I mean, how much of the tariff revenue, if they were to send out $1,000 to $2,000 stimulus checks, like what percent of the tariff revenue is that? Any idea?
But then the other question is people bring up is, do you think that, and I think Saylor has had an opinion on this, being a Bitcoin superpower of the world, which we've declared ourselves wanting to be through executive orders this year, is that by the US personally owning it, like the government owning it on their balance sheet, or are they just wanting to make it easier for Americans individually and corporations to own it? That also can change your answer to all these questions.
Right. I think that Saylor had mentioned that he thinks it's more so that he's making it's just like a friendly environment for the banks and the corporations to own it, and that's how it's not like the U.S. would be leading that by owning their own. That kind of makes me feel more like when we're talking about the sovereign wealth fund or like taking a stake in strategy. You know, we're kind of in this. The government's never really held like public equities, right? Like so them just buying 10% of Intel, that was obviously like new, right? I don't know how great I feel about that being like true like capitalism, but we've gotten to the point where the system is so broken that if that's the only thing that holds together like the currency, you know, and I could see them totally doing that, buying a stake in like a big treasury company.
Yeah,
Strategy.
for the wealth appreciation, but what are they going to do with it? Like what? We bought Intel and it's up 50%, and now we're going to helicopter money to people. Like,
Yeah,
what's the actual net gain?
Yeah, it's the problem with politics, right?
So let's say that the US bought $1 million, a million Bitcoin, and sent it to the moon, and what does the Lummis bill actually propose they do with that? Pay down the debt, or like what do politicians who are pro Bitcoin think it will actually do for the government?
I think if you hold it for a long enough period of time, you can sell that Bitcoin and basically erase the debt. But I think what would wind up happening is we just would peg it to like if they held it that long, they would understand it's going up forever. They would you wouldn't sell it. You would just say like we have this much on our balance sheet, you know, and it's more our assets are greater than our liabilities, you know.
Yeah,
and that
so
would be
like they would essentially hold it long term enough to reduce the national debt.
Yeah, and you just hold it into perpetuity. That would be what's backing up the value of the currency, the dollar. The thing that scares me is that like if they did say, let's say the U.S. did say we're going like on a Bitcoin standard, we're not looking at gold. Like if you're China, does that incite a war in itself?
I set up at the dinner the other night. Like I think we were talking about what are black swan events, and like basically how would we get to 444 was what we were talking about. How do we get to 444 by November?
There were no psychedelics involved.
No, and we're like, well, I'm like, yeah, if we just went all in on Bitcoin, like we could incite a hot war because people like China, who have the guns that we don't, like even though we pretend we do, they're like, no, it's not going to fly, you know. And they could do that, and then they could just invade Taiwan, right, as
Right.
their response, and then dare us to get involved. The theory of all these proxy wars actually being bullish for not having a World War III because everyone's just spending all their munitions. Not that war is ever bullish on anything. Like people are losing their lives and it's horrible and they should all stop. But in terms of a grander scale war, the longer these proxy wars go out, like everyone just spends all their munitions and everyone's just in an overall weaker state of military. I've kind of like that theory and I've thought about it a little bit.
Yeah,
That
until
the longer these wars smolder on, the less likely massive World War III happens. That's an interesting
the scary part to
mind.
me is you have some people that, you know, like Putin or Xi, that like a lot of these people have nothing to lose. Like they could use the nuclear option, and that trumps all the munitions, you know, being depleted. Then you whole other host of issues.
That's true. So that was a tangent on strategy being nationalized. I think that there's not an alignment, a questionable benefit to anybody, really.
I just think we've kind of made the argument.
What's
The final frontier is Bitcoin, right? Everything funnels into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the biggest AI play. Like if you just start amongst all the podcasts we watch, that's kind of like the common theme that's coming to the forefront, right? We have no idea how fast technology is going to start moving within the next 5 to 10 years and what that's going to do to the job market, what that's going to do to our everyday lives. What we do know is you have to have some type of scarce asset that's going to fight against inflation and fight against the currency debasement. I think Bitcoin has to be that. And then if you're the USA, like what other option do you have?
If you're USA, I think what you're going to be forced to do is print boatloads of ungodly amounts of money to support the reshoring and all the infrastructure that we need. And you're going to have to just make it easy for individuals to protect themselves with a hard money like Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and
so
if the U.S. government and the structure as we know it survives the reshoring and the geopolitical unrest that could just kick off at any time, then maybe on the back end we can re-collateralize on Bitcoin.
So
they're gonna have I don't see how they can print all the money and be buying Bitcoin unless they just print the money to buy the Bitcoin.
Right. So that's all and good that like you're going to, as a Bitcoiner, I'm like, great. Yeah. Turn up the money printer because that's only going to benefit, that's going to increase the Bitcoin price. That's great for me. That's great if you're in Bitcoin. But the average American isn't in Bitcoin, right? The average American's living paycheck to paycheck, doesn't own hard assets. So like this whole idea of the US just printing a bunch of money, like that's going to create a greater wealth inequality. Like there has to be some element of like, it's a balancing act because you can't just do that either.
Their answer to wealth inequality is print more money and make people happy and to get the votes they need.
Well, you're printing money to make people happy today with the helicopter money, but then in a year later, that $1,000 that you get today is going to cause inflation to go up, and your paycheck a year from now, you're going to make less than the 1,000 you got.
Welcome to Bitcoin 101. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah, but I mean,
right. This is what we started the episode with. How do you orange pill people? Why do you orange pill people?
Yeah,
people don't recognize the problem.
What's the value of the stimulus checks from COVID in 2020 now? It was like the $1,400 is now 25 grand or something like that, and Bitcoin.
I'll look it up. Because someone has an automated X account that tracks it. Let me look it up.
I know we've all seen that. I mean, if I get a stimulus check, that's exactly where my money is going. Not financial advice. But I don't know, man. It's just, I'm optimistic for Bitcoin. I don't know how optimistic I am for the United States to get it right.
I don't know what that account is, but it's a lot. Like, we've come a long ways from the stimulus checks. Oh, here we go. Bitcoin stimulus. That's an old one. Matt, I don't know. Don't go to these websites until I confirm. Okay, yeah. BitcoinStimulus.net. The $1,200 stimulus check is now worth $22,303 plus 1,759%.
Pretty good return for 4 years.
So it goes back to the ultimate, like, orange filling versus just writing people off is not going to make it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's my point, right? Like, do you feel having had this conversation, do you feel a duty to try to help other people who just don't get it?
I think I have a duty now to just wake people up. I'm going to anti-orange pill and just try to convince people how bad everything else is. That's my new mission.
I mean, I kind of do. That's like step one, right? Is you kind of show them, like, get them to kind of agree, like, yeah, you feel this, right? You feel how bad it is. You feel inflation. You know it's more than the actual 2 to 3% that they actually quote, right? Why is that? You have to get their wheels turning, and then once they figure that out, then you kind of can give them the solution. I think the other alternative is like you paint that, and then like they don't know where else to go.
I don't know. It's like it's equally hopeful and equally depressing at the same time. That's kind of what the world I'm in right now. Is all the news and the price running is like infinitely hopeful and like bearish, and like if you're in Bitcoin, it's great, but it just makes me so much more depressed for people that don't get it.
Yeah, I kind of go back to this whole idea of like you have to do things to try and help other people, and that's part of the reason I feel like an obligation to orange pill is because I feel lucky that somebody else orange pilled me, and that's benefited my life. I want the country that I love to benefit too. Like this is theoretically a solution to a lot of the issues that we have. Not everybody's going to get it, but at least I can say I tried to help the people who.
Yeah, I'd say that I've gone down the AI rabbit hole and like just the massive productivity gains that people still don't even realize are here now and coming in the next couple of years. Like, it's so hard to predict like how we make it through that, and like the only way to protect yourself from that volatility and like change and like disruption and everything that we know is owning Bitcoin, like personally owning Bitcoin for you and your family. Like, I'm more convinced of that now than ever. And how we as a country, how we individually, as a profession, doctors, lawyers, anybody who makes it through, like, it's very hard to predict like what that looks like. But I think as Jordy Mister said this initially, like, and it's a view that I think we all hold, but I can't tell you what AI company is going to be around in like 1 year or 2 years, 5 years. But like I know Bitcoin's going to be around, and I feel very strongly it's going to be worth more in fiat dollars than it is today.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
I don't know. I didn't really wrap up my thoughts there, but I'm infinitely bullish and infinitely bearish at the same time.
Yeah, I
I'm
guess
bullish Bitcoin and bearish everything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's why I'm hopeful that the U.S. has some type of reserve, and that's that they can build that. That becomes a part of the infrastructure, right? If that's the thing you're most bullish on, like, you ideally want that at the core part of your foundation of your country.
But
And
I
the
think
principles.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying the principles of Bitcoin are the same principles that the United States was founded on. Like, that's being a Bitcoiner is just as American as being an American.
I agree. I think there's a lot of hopium on X that we sign the SBR and everything just fixed automatically overnight. Like, if that happens, that's like step 0 of fixing it.
Right.
Right.
I agree.
The work starts when that gets signed. It's not over and we have a party and ride off onto our private islands and beaches, and like, that's when it starts. Like, that's when it becomes a real thing, and then your job is really to orange people, make them understand why the U.S. just did that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could even get in. My wheels are turning. I'm thinking about the whole strategy nationalization thing again. Like, that could eventually be a form of. I mean, we're gonna move towards universal basic income. I think with AI, I think that's a given at this point.
This helicopter money check is like the first. It is basic income.
Yeah, 100%.
People are struggling so much, and they want to ensure they get the votes that they want, so they're just going to give you money.
If the U.S. had a huge stake in strategy, they could be able to issue that. Like, that's what you have access to. Stretch and that liquidity. That becomes like a form of universal basic income.
Yeah, I guess I see your argument, but I don't think it's related to the Intel thing, personally.
I think the Intel thing was
it pushes you.
Stepping stone.
Yeah, I think it points you in that direction of that vein that you didn't think could exist before. But I think the reason that they would buy strategy is vastly different than why they bought into Intel.
Oh, they're for different
and
reasons.
Lithium and all that.
But they're both. You have to have some form of capital that's going to appreciate. You can't the reason we are where we are now is because of the fiat debasement. That's not the answer. Isn't just like continue to debase the fiat, right? That's not like all of a sudden going to make everything better. That's my argument.
That's what we're doing, but that's what we're doing right now.
100%. And that's why that's the stuff that I'm like scares me, is that I'm hopeful that they see that's an issue, and Percent and all these other guys who are Bitcoiners obviously understand what it could do and what the thesis is, and I'm hoping that they're drumming up something to use it as a way to appreciate and help rebuild.
Yeah,
so I do think it has to be a core part of the whoever's going to be the next president and their platform. Like, think about where we are 4 years from today.
Yeah, it would be wild because a stretch type of instrument would be the answer to universal basic income. Like,
I think it is.
But then strategy holders are benefiting from the ARB. So like, how would it work if the government could capture the ARB and improve our fundamentals at the foundational level and still pay people the 10% yield? Like, I don't think that them buying stretch doesn't achieve that.
It depends on what the appreciation of the Bitcoin is.
Because if they buy stretch and their $100 fiat stays $100 fiat and they keep debasing the currency, they don't actually win. It doesn't improve anything. Because that $100 in fiat is still getting debased. So it's bit bonds, right?
Yeah, it's basically going to be Bitbond type product.
It would be Bitbonds over buying strategy, I think. Except for just having exposure to Bitcoin in like a sovereign wealth fund type of capacity. Like, yeah, buying strategy as the biggest one with the biggest moat makes sense. But it's not the same as them buying Bitcoin.
No, it's absolutely not.
Because it's still all these equities are still fiat denominated, and that's the problem. So you have to somehow get something in the government on a Bitcoin standard. which the only
100%.
solution that I'm thinking of, like this is just real time me thinking about it. Obviously, we don't do prep for these episodes when we're on call, but we don't do much when we actually plan it. But when we do a lot, actually. If you asked our spouses, like
This one's
we
off the
do
cuff.
too much.
Chris and I were just going to have a conversation because we're both on call. We're both on call shifts where we usually only come in for emergencies or the stat cases. And so we sleep at the hospital. So we're going to be on the phone anyway talking about this stuff. We just decided.
And I will say, I'm gonna have to keep doing it because every time that I do this on call, nothing happens work-wise.
Hey, this is
I'm worried if I don't record, then I'm gonna actually have to work.
And we also made the joke that there's some signal and some alpha in the fact that you got two doctors that are choosing to talk about Bitcoin on a call podcast.
I derailed the conversation again, the tangent, and I just knocked us off track. The U.S. buying strategy is interesting. They've set precedent they would buy stakes in public companies, so it's not off the table. Apparently, Trump knows Michael Saylor from the Florida connection, like their families know each other, so it's like a very possible thing. Like the Overton window has shifted to include that possibility. I agree. I don't know if I see the writing on the wall of what the direct benefit would be initially. And a sovereign wealth fund only really works if you have a surplus, and we're so far from that. Yeah, but we have paper gains on Intel, but we don't actually. We're not going to sell the Intel and take the gains.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the big argument for the paper gains with the gold, right? No one knows how much gold we actually have, but obviously that's appreciated a considerable amount. You have to do something with that, right? So
I don't know. What else is on our agenda? We made a small agenda, to have something to talk about. We talked about Stretch being finally at par, but at the same time, Saylor threw a curveball and didn't buy Bitcoin with it.
What did he say?
What if he said I'm going to have a cash reserve? Do you think that would be bullish or bearish?
Saylor has a cash reserve?
If he said, we raised money over the quarter change, and to keep accounting clean, we're just going to keep that chunk that we sold as a cash reserve for dividends, so you can all shut up about the ATM.
No, I don't think that'll happen.
I
think he's all about transparency, right? He's like the reason.
No, yeah.
The people that buy strategy are Bitcoin maxis because they want 100% Bitcoin. If you start having cash on the balance sheet, then you inherently introduce some, it dilutes the.
But they do have cash on the balance sheet. They're not 100% Bitcoin. Like if you actually look in their statements, they have cash for the operating business and otherwise.
Yeah, but that's going to you. It's not like it's sitting there waiting.
It would not change my conviction if they chose to do that because it's out the market.
I guess what are you asking? That they're going to hold
it's a hypothetical. If they did that, do you think the market would respond positively or negatively?
No, I think if everybody
if they said we sold 100 million of stock and we're going to hold it for cash reserves.
No, because everybody that's a strategy bull is a Bitcoin maxi. They want him to hold as little fiat as possible.
What if they sold preferreds without issuing common? It's not dilutive to Bitcoin per share. The torque goes down because they didn't buy the Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin per share for common doesn't change.
I think that whole premise of, holding, he's not going to hold melting ice cubes more than.
I think it's antithetical to his whole thesis on Bitcoin, but
I don't think
that also happen. If he did that, if he framed it right and telegraphed it right, was transparent about it, I would be that's an acceptable part of just having an equity that you're promising all these dividends.
I think he wants to take it out to where he's doing as little as possible and he's as transparent as possible. I mean, think about the uproar that people had when he.
But what if he said? What if the next earnings call it's we're going to keep X coverage of the dividends in cash, and then as the prefs scale, we keep that much more cash.
For how long? For
until people shut up about it.
I think that's stupid. I think the vast majority of people that are in strategy would not want him to do that.
Fair. So do you think that the bears who say, you should just sell the Bitcoin to pay the dividends? They're just not. I'm just saying this hypothetical thing on the spectrum. So people say, I don't care, just sell equity to do the dividends, which I'm in that camp. There's people that say, you should sell the Bitcoin and take the gains and pay the dividends, which I think is just the same thing as over here, but you just add an extra step of buying and selling Bitcoin, which is taxable and all the things. The middle ground is you think that it's acceptable they should keep a certain amount of coverage in cash, because ultimately, do you think that increases the credit worthiness of the company?
I think that is a more important conversation. I don't know that necessarily holding some cash. I think it's important that the operating business stays positive. I think that's probably important to S&P inclusion and to credit ratings is that they have a positive operating business.
Option number 2.
Level 1.
Okay.
Fiat.
Fiat calls.
All right, man. Fiat calls. That's right. Let me go check this out.
Are you
Yeah, we're
bullish or
bullish.
bearish?
I'm bullish, man. I'm always bullish on Bitcoin. It's going to be a good Q4. I think we're just starting. I'm excited for October, excited for November.
Yeah. All good things.
So I think all good things. Exactly. All right,
All right,
man.
dude.
I'm going to jump off.
Hopefully you don't. All right.